I didn't really believe fully that I was an alcoholic, that I had a real problem. After the abuse started, I thought all that I offered was what I look like on the outside. I started comparing my story to others in the rooms, and people around me were saying, "You don't have a drinking problem, right?"
Marci Hopkins is an award winning television personality, author, speaker, and mental health advocate whose work focuses on helping people heal from trauma, addiction, and limiting beliefs. She's also the host of Wake Up with Marci, and she's the author of Chaos to Clarity, Seeing the Signs and Breaking the Cycles. And her newest book is Wake Up. You're Not Broken, a companion for your first 30 days of sobriety. Marci, welcome to the show.
It's a lot to get sober.
Yeah, and the thing is, you hear more and more people now who are choosing to become or be sober, whether it was a problem or not.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. I think that we're recognizing that we don't have to drink to be happy, and that people are talking more about our mindsets and how we can change that and calm our nervous systems, and we don't turn to the negative fallbacks like alcohol is one of those to face our emotions.
yeah, uh, you're right. I don't know what this generation is looking at for the alcohol, but I'll say back with mine was, you could call it liquid courage for men for certain things, or like you said, to calm your nerves. I'm going to grab a couple glasses of wine or a shot of whiskey, but it has all changed. I think for the better.
Yeah. I think, well, people are thinking about their health so much more. Um, I know some people are replacing alcohol, right? And that's a problem for young people, whether it's marijuana or THC, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what they call it anymore. Right? I mean, everybody's got these different names. I just know, I think that I called it marijuana or weed or something, and my daughter that's 20 said nobody calls it that anymore. I'm like, well, whatever. And another one is kratom, which is uh, a natural opioid, and that's what it gives you, the same effect of the opioids. And that one's pretty scary. A lot of young people are finding that they're addicted to that, and even adults.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. We're always looking for a benefit in something that's negative, and sometimes it still is a negative, I think.
Yeah, and I will say, Chuck, I I got a message the other day that someone used my book, said they were using my book to get over kratom, and it, like, because really, what at the end of the day, it is breaking a negative habit, and there is a way to do that, and it doesn't matter what that is for you. We all have these negative ways of coping or filling our cup in some way or masking a pain, and the way that we get past that is a lot of the same for some, for some people. Of course, not every, there's no cookie cutter way, but these steps that have helped me, I'm almost 11 years sober, uh, truly are helping many people out there.
Um, and congratulations on your 11 years on that, on
Thank
sobriety.
you.
Uh, you do have this incredible personal backstory. So I was just wondering, what at what point, and well, looking back, what made you really realize that you weren't actually broken? You were just carrying these wounds that needed healing.
Hmm. And let me tell you, it took me a while to understand that it wasn't that I wasn't broken, and that my past didn't define me, because it really did define me for quite some time. And I lived in such a victim role. Uh, in my youth, I experienced abandonment issues, had alcoholic parents. There was a lot of anger within the home, and then sexual abuse for me. And that changed so much. I lost that young girl. that had all of the dreams. And I talk so much more about that in Chaos to Clarity. I really go in depth in my story and what happened and why I turned to alcohol. And the first time that I did use alcohol was when I was 12 years old. Um, and but I also experimented even earlier than that, because I think about it, like my mom gave me alcohol when I remember I was 8 years old, and I had a lot of stomach issues. And now I understand probably a lot of those stomach issues were because of the things that I was dealing with emotionally, and they were showing themselves by these physical ailments. But she said, "Here, have a drink of margarita. It helps me go to the bathroom." Right. So, like, that's 8 years old. That was the answer. It was always the answer. And so I used alcohol from 12 on. The sexual abuse started when I was 12. And I I really did break. I was failing in school. I had no goals. I didn't feel safe in my home. I ultimately told my mother 2 times, and she did not leave. Um, and I've learned to forgive her and understand possibly what she was going through at that time and who she was. Um, and then just and how it changed me as far as like who I was in relationships, how I thought about myself, and the constant narrative in my head, and that victim role that I always played. And alcohol was always a part of my life. And it's after high school I started using alcohol every day, and it was my go-to, even after became a professional in work. I mean, I always went home and had a couple glasses of wine. And my life, and this is the condensed version, my life looked really good. I managed to climb the ladder in work. Ultimately, I'm from Houston, went to Denver with work, went to LA because that's where corporate was for Fox. I was working for Fox Cable Group. Ended up being the director of on-air promotions for FX. Met my husband, an executive. We got married, had a child. And so, like, I managed, I was functioning, high functioning, even while using alcohol every day.
Yeah.
And we ended up moving to New Jersey, had our second child, and I still drinking, and it was creating some conflict in my relationship with my husband, because he saw a pattern there. And I will say that I was highly sensitive, highly sensitive person. I didn't know how to communicate well my needs. I was a people pleaser, perfectionist, always looking for validation from others, to always fill this emptiness inside of me. So there was filling my cup with that by getting validation, whether it was my work, whether it was in the community, whether it was from my husband, and then also using alcohol. And then when I was in my 40s, I went after a lifelong dream. I had 2 children, and I decided to get in front of the camera. And it was through that process that all of my demons came out, my lack of confidence and judgment of myself, and started using alcohol more, as you called it, liquid courage. That's what I called it. And because I would get in those constant, the auditions, and feeling judged all of the time. And it was like going in for an interview every day, right? And having to manage trying to be that helicopter mom, because I didn't want my kids to feel anything I felt when I was growing up, like any sort of abandonment, that I was always there for them. And then also I throw myself into something when I go after it. And so I was, trying to get education on how to be a good actor and commercial acting, and be there for my agents and for the gigs and all the things, and just things begin to unravel.
Hmm.
And then there was also some personal things going on for me. Like, I turned 40, and I did have a midlife crisis, because all my life, after the abuse started, I thought all that I offered was what I look like on the outside. And so now I'm hitting 40, and like, oh my God, I'm going to start aging. So, I was always trying to be perfect. And so that hit me, and perimenopause. So it was just like this storm. And it was I did try to stop drinking in 2014, and it was about 3 months in AA. I went to 12-step program to quit. But it was one of those things where I was struggling.
Mhm.
Um, and I think part of the question is, how do you know, right? Like, I always was conscious of my drinking, conscious of everyone else's drinking, because I was always comparing, because I didn't want to turn into my mother that was a full-blown alcoholic. And so I was just constantly on edge with that, constantly worried about it, constantly just if you and I were out, I would watch how many drinks you had, and I would try not to have more drinks than you had, right?
Okay, yeah.
It was just something that I was very conscious of. But then when I started the acting, started day drinking. Anytime I was going on auditions, started drinking more, started surrounding myself with more. My self, I had no self confidence, no self esteem, and I just started using so much more. That's why I tried to stop drinking, but then I didn't really believe fully that I was an alcoholic, that I had a real problem. I started comparing my story to others in the rooms, and people around me were saying, "You don't have a drinking problem, right?" But it was creating problems in my marriage, and just some decisions I was making, and just the way I felt about myself. I mean, I've had so much shame and guilt around the decisions that I was making and who I was becoming, or maybe recognizing that I was who I was. And then in that year, my drinking elevated, and I started hiding my drinking at the end, making really, like, drinking and driving, like, things I would never do. And October 3rd, 2015 was my last day of drinking. I went on a modeling gig, and I ended up drinking before I went on did the show. And then I went out after with a friend of mine, and the complete story is in my book, but just for time's sake, I won't take you through it all. But I ultimately ended up drinking too much, and that's when I started. That was when, at a place where I was. This was maybe my fifth blackout. Like, I wasn't. I was on that slippery slope where it was starting down the path of
Mhm.
being getting really bad. And I woke up. I went to bed a victim that night. I'd gotten a DUI. Somebody called me in, and I blamed my husband for never being around. I blamed him for the way he treated me. It was anybody else's fault but mine. And I woke up that next day, October 4th, 2015, and there's something about when you really surrender to any disease, or anytime you're a disease of addiction, and you decide that you're going to stop something. It's just like, it is a complete surrender. I mean, you're soul tired. You can't do it anymore. And I went down to my husband, and I was so afraid that I was going to lose everything
Mhm.
that I actually was turning my back on when I was drinking. But it was in that moment I had so much, that clarity, finally some clarity. Like, this is what you built, Marcy. You've built this beautiful life, and now it's just gonna collapse if you don't make a change. And I went down to my husband, and I told him I needed help, and asking for help was really hard for me. And he ended up embracing me, and it was the first time I felt real, true love. And that is what I'd been seeking all of my life. And there it was, right in front of me. And just all the walls that had built up just come crashing down. It was just like I was ready just to do whatever it took to change my life. And so that's when life changed for me.
But this certainly sounds like it could be miniseries TV script. And what I mean by that is there's a lot that's happening, and there's a lot that people can associate with, whether they are an alcoholic or have an addiction or not, because there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of trauma. Um,
Yeah.
it's why do you, I know there's a lot that you just said, but why do you think that people feel broken when they're, we'll just say, if they're not necessarily an addict, but they still have that anxiety and there's that trauma? Is there something that makes them believe that they're broken?
Well, a lot of times we just carry so much shame and we think
Mm,
it's our fault a
okay.
lot of times. It's very hard to process it in any way. And we just build up these barriers for so long. And those barriers, those walls, whatever you want to call them, to protect our hearts and ourselves from never being hurt again. And a lot of times we do that with anger or resentment of others or jealousy or all these low energy frequency feelings and emotions, and we just stay stuck in this low vibration of life, and we're just constantly complaining. We're comparing ourselves to other people. We're constantly angry. We're living in resentment. We feel sorry for ourselves. We're telling the same story over and over again, and we just stay stuck in that story. Like, this happened to me, this happened to me, like, listen to me, feel sorry for me, right? And fill my cup, make me feel better, make me feel better. And and we just feel like, how can we ever pull out of this? Like, these terrible things happen in our lives. Like, I've I am broken and I have so many cracks, I could never pull my life back together. But the thing is that we all have a story. We've all been wounded in some way. It's just how we then learn to heal from that and transform. And transformation happens by some simple things, but are very hard to do. Simply asking for help, communicating our needs, connecting with others. We think we can do it all alone. We isolate. We, like I said, we're strong. We're living in survival, but we're not. We're not strong. We're weak inside, and we have just created this barrier around us, that we think is protecting us.
Going back to like the sobriety bit, because in your book you walk readers through, I think, really the first 30 days of
Hmm.
sobriety.
Yeah,
And it is a one day at a time type of
it
thing.
is. Yeah,
I was wondering what was happening emotionally during those first 30 days, first couple of weeks, that
yeah,
people aren't often prepared for.
yeah. I think what people think is that you decide. I think people believe that, okay, I've decided I'm going to stop drinking now, right? And just life is going to change, right?
Mhm.
We're just start going to things are going to just start getting better. And in the beginning, we have a lot of shame, we have a lot of guilt, resentment, and anger, and we don't have a lot of clarity. We're not sleeping well. We're feeling really down about ourselves, and we're having to now face these emotions that we have been masking for so long. But if we get into a community of like-minded people, slowly, and the alcohol begins to leave our system, we will start to have some clarity. Some very positive things will start happening in those early days. You're going to start having some clarity. You're going to start sleeping better. You're going to start, um, you know, eating better, wanting to take care of yourself better, and you're not going to have so much hate for yourself in
Okay.
those first early days. But you are going to start facing those emotions, like I said, and you're going to have to find new ways. You're going to have to. I offer a lot of tools how to face those emotions. You're also going to have cravings. You have now taken this from your body, and your body is now going to crave. And a lot of that is sugar that your body is craving. You have been, ingesting these empty calories for so long, and your body is going to crave that. So give yourself grace during that time, and eat the chocolates, eat the fruit, drink the fruit juices, the things that are going to help you with those cravings, and then also the tools. So when you crave something, you have to change the behavior, right? You're also going to be triggered at times. So I'll just use an example. At 5 o'clock, you have this clock in your head, like, okay, I at 5 o'clock, I'm now supposed to have my glass of wine. So now you're going to have to change your behavior and help yourself through the craving. A craving happens for about 20 minutes most times. So instead of staying in the kitchen a familiar place where you used to drink and a familiar time that triggers you to want to do this, now at 5 o'clock, change your behavior. So maybe you go and you take a walk, or maybe you call a friend, call somebody at that time that can help you get past that craving or past that trigger. There's tools like move a muscle, change a thought. So I don't want to overwhelm you, but there are many things that we can do when we are faced physical, emotional, and spiritually at that time. There are things that we can do that will help us to change our behaviors. But you have to give yourself grace during this time, because you think about this behavior you have been doing for so long, and your body has become addicted to this thing, right?
Mhm.
It's changed your brain, and that is the disease. And now you're going to have to start rewiring your brain, your thinking, and your behaviors. And you do that by many different tools and different behaviors.
You made me think of something when you said that, as far as changing the behavior, and uh, I'll I'll say sometimes I do have that. Sometimes, listen to me, that addiction of grabbing for junk food because I'm hovering in my kitchen in that familiar area. So now I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe this is the perfect reason to have an excuse to subscribe to a magazine. And when I have that craving of something, pick up the magazine and sit down and read an article. And I'm saying a magazine specifically for two reasons. One is you don't want to get yourself caught in scrolling, because everybody gets caught in that doom scrolling
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
internet. So
Don't
get
don't
rid of
replace one with the other,
it.
right? One
Right.
negative thing with the other. Yeah.
And then not a book. And the reason I say not a book is my thinking is I think a lot of people think a book is too daunting. I got to read it. Now I got to go next
Yeah,
chapter
it's
after
very
chapter.
overwhelming. Yeah.
A magazine, you read an article, 5 minutes or whatever, 10, you've completed it, you're done, you've moved past your craving of the other thing.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
now,
just like my book. I kept the chapters very short. And because of the same thinking, right? Because you don't want anything that's overwhelming.
mhm,
And you just need a safe place to go and have something that's going to change your thought process. You're interrupting that thought process is really what you're doing over and over, so that you can change the behavior.
mhm,
And so it's like day one, I talk about what could be happening for you at that time. And then here is a tool that will help you to get through it. And then here is a journal prompt for you to write and get this stuff out of your head. And then an affirmation, something positive that you can take with yourself, that you can say over and over through the day when things get difficult.
yeah. Um, Positive affirmations, you can give them to yourself. You did mention shame. So I was wondering,
Hmm.
why is shame so difficult or such a powerful obstacle? And it's not only for people who have an addiction, but you know,
Hmm.
it it seems like that shame can be an everyday thing that we're having a difficult time moving past.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the shame of what has happened, the shame of feeling that it's your fault that you've done something wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you feel, even if it's not happening, that people are judging you, or they're like seeing through you what your thoughts are and your actions, and these lies that you're keeping inside of yourself. And you just carry so much shame because of that. And one of the things that I always say is that when you start to tell your story, when you start to bring out your story in a different way, not feeling sorry for yourself, but really facing what has happened and to start that healing. Once you start verbalizing that, because a lot of people hold it in and never even shared, that's when you really start healing. When you
Mm-hmm.
start bringing it out, because we keep this stuck inside of ourselves, right? You may think that you're pushing it down and you're not thinking about it, but even if it's not the current thought, because we only use so much of our brain in our woken state, it subconsciously is always there, and it will come out in our bodies and in our lives in other ways, negative ways.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Um, I'm going to guess that a lot of this that we're having a conversation about today is things that you feature in your podcast and your conversations about recovery and grief and mental health and everything like that. But this is kind of a personal question for you is after interviewing all those people, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned about what it takes for someone to really change their life?
Yeah. Well, I will say there are a few things that everyone has done that has changed their lives, right? First of all, they make a decision to turn a positive out of a very negative thing that has happened in their lives, right? You have those that stay stuck and feel sorry for themselves and never heal through a difficult time or a difficult thing that has happened in their lives. And life is going to happen, and very hard things are going to happen in our lives. But it is how we get through those things that change. And that's when you become more resilient and you are able to identify that something has happened, question what has happened. Why am I feeling this way? Recognize that you're feeling that way, and then making a decision to do something different so you can change the feelings that you are having. And you can feel bad about something, feel sad about something, feel angry about something. Recognize the emotion, but then turn it around. And then the other thing is spirituality, gratitude, forgiveness. Three major ways to change your life. And these are practices that you would put into action every day of your life.
It sounds like to me, I mean, we're using the words of decision and change. Is it really comes down to choice? You have that choice. You can make that positive choice or that negative choice. Is that simplifying it too much by using that word choice? You have a choice. I'm going to be a victim or I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to drink, or I'm not going to drink. I'm going to grab that bag of candy or I'm not. So, is that
It's
correct? Is it okay to say it that way?
the words are easy, the action is hard.
Mhm.
Yes. Because we do have a choice. Now, when we are so deep into addiction and our bodies depend on something, right? Whether it's a drug or alcohol, I mean, food is something we need, right?
Mhm.
But we are can make bad decisions and use food emotionally. But if we stop eating Cheetos, we're not going to die, right?
Right.
Right. So, but if we stop immediately doing a drug or drinking alcohol and our bodies are fully dependent on it, it could kill us. So it does get very tricky in making, like for me, I was on a slippery slope of getting to a place where I would have needed assisted detoxing. Okay. So there in choices, it 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 can be as simple as that, but it's very loaded underneath, right? So it just recognizing that we can say the simple word is a choice, and we do have choices, and we do have, but we're changing lifelong behaviors, the wiring, the neuroplasticity in our brains, our nervous system. There's so much underneath it that we are changing, and it is by daily action that we can change that. So if you go in and you need detox, you have the assisted detox, you then need to make the decision and do the choice of the action every day to create the foundation and keep the motivation and make that change.
This is just me talking. I'm not a psychiatrist, counselor, psychologist, or anything
Me
like
either. I
that.
just have life experience.
I think a lot of people, when they look at something like this and they want to maybe, I'll just use the word, they want to quit, they think that it's going to happen overnight.
Yeah, no.
And then once it's done, it's done. But it's really not. It's something that I think you said you work on it daily. It's a daily thing. And
It is it is about, in the beginning, it's about quitting drinking, right? It's about stopping drinking. But then it is about the action of getting your life back and
mm,
creating a new fulfilling life, living life a different way. And it is by these methods that we create in our lives, and routines that we implement, that those changes can happen. I mean, I'm 10 and a half years sober. Well, October, I'll be 11 years sober. I mean, I still, every day, I do my practice of gratitude. I still get quiet, to connect with my higher power, to connect to my higher self. And these are things that I never stop doing, because these are the things that are life changing. And these practices keep me grounded. They keep me at peace, and they allow me to move through life in a different way.
I think you said this at the very beginning, and I think you mentioned it probably throughout your book. And I say think because I haven't read the book or anything like that. Um, is you talk about healing isn't really about perfection, right?
No, no.
That's something where a lot of people maybe have a misconception. Well, healing, it's perfection. But so what does progress actually look like in real life, when you're progressing?
I think progress is evolution, it's change.
Mm,
And, every day, one little mini micro step is progress. But it's just taking the small actions every day, not by overwhelming yourself like, "Oh my God, like I never want to drink again. I'm never going to drink in my whole entire life." That is so daunting. Like, I
mhm.
used to think that. And so now you have to narrow the thinking. And that's when that one day at a time happens. Stay present, stay grounded. And that's in anything, because the only thing we have control of is this minute right now. We don't have any control of how another person is, how the outcome is going to be, how someone perceives something. Nothing. We don't have control. We have control of our actions, what is happening in this moment. And just, it's all in the way that we start thinking and grounding ourselves, that change is going to happen. And one of the methods that I have created is called the CARE method. So this was something that I didn't do for myself. And I realized that these things really are life changing. So, communication, right? Talking, communicating our needs. That's very difficult. There is a way to communicate, a time to communicate, a place to communicate, so people can hear our needs and the way that we say them, and recognizing that there's somebody else's perception. There's so much in communication, right? but communicating with somebody else and not keeping it inside. That's what I did for so long. I just pushed, and then I would blow up. And then like things would come out, like things that happened 6 weeks ago, and it's all coming out, spewing out, and nothing is heard and nothing changes. So it's that communication, the key to communication. Then asking for help. We think that we can't ask for help, that it's a weakness, that we're showing that we're vulnerable, that we can't do it. So we push and we push and we keep, trying to do it all of ourselves, and then things start collapsing. So it's learning to ask for help without guilt and recognizing that asking for help is a strength. And then reinforcing our boundaries, that people pleasing, right? Doing things all the time for other people, but we're depleted. So just understanding what is important to you and enforcing those boundaries, and just asking the question, like, is this depleting me or is this energizing me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the boundaries that you are creating for yourself, and then embracing your worth, right? Like you're starting recognizing who you are and that you are worth something, and then that is going to grow with those other three pillars, that worth and the way that you think about yourself is going to grow and enhance with those actions.
Mm. This also, it sounds like forgiveness, forgiving yourself and forgiving others as well.
That's part of that, when I talked about, again, that forgiveness and gratitude and the spirituality, three huge pillars, and I also talk about those in my book. But forgiveness is so hard. Forgiving someone that has wronged you, right? That person did this to me, that hurt me. When we forgive, it's not saying that that action is okay. It's not saying what you did to me is okay. I'm letting you go. It's okay. I'm releasing the power of what you did to me. I'm letting that go. So I no longer carry that, right? So you're forgiving so you can release yourself from that anchor that other person has kept you in, and then all those negative emotions that you just continue to live in. And then forgiving yourself is very hard, like in early sobriety, especially. Like that's what I know, is that it's so hard to forgive yourself for all those bad decisions that you made. But what can you do? You cannot change those decisions that you made then. You can now change who you are today and the decisions that you're making going forward. And you can make an amends to those that you have harmed. And you give them the decision if they're going to forgive you or not, because you don't have control over that. But then over time, you do, with these multitude of actions, the toolbox that I have created and I share in my book. These actions will help you slowly to forgive yourself. And once you release yourself of the burden of these bad decisions that you've made, and you've got to let it go. They don't define who you are. You can change who you are and the decisions that you make.
Marcy, all this information is so powerful and so helpful. Can you let the viewers know, the audience, where they could get more information about you, where they can, get the
Yeah,
book and all of that?
absolutely. I think the easiest place for people to go is my website, wakeupwithmarci.com. It has all the information, my social media, where you can get the books. But on all social media, I am Wake Up with Marci, and that's Marci with an I. And I just, I want people to know that they're not alone, and there's so much help. And it is through the connection that we create the transformation.
Uh, so when the audience picks up your book and
Mhm.
they finish, the Wake Up, You're Not Broken, and after they listen and watch this show, uh, is there a message from you that you want or that you hope that they take away?
Yeah. I hope that each person through this process gives themselves grace.
Mm,
knows that they are worthy of love and they are worthy of the best life possible.
that's powerful. And we get back to easier said than done. But my hope is the same, is after they read your book, after they watch this program, they watch and listen to your podcast, that they walk away with that. Uh,
Yeah. Just start with recognizing it's that surrender. It's you may not be ready today,
mhm.
but if you're thinking about it, then maybe it is time for a change. And maybe this is the message that you needed to hear to start that journey. And maybe it's just listening to podcasts. Maybe it's listening to YouTube videos. Maybe it's making a connection with someone else that has gone through the same. Maybe it's just buying the book. But there are so many tools, and you cannot do this alone. You cannot do it alone, and you are worthy. Just know that.
Marcy, I want to say thank you for dedicating your time today, but dedicating your life to help others. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my gift turning that pain into purpose.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck, for having me on the show.